Wait, that wasn't supposed to be there. Marcus froze in the doorway of his apartment building's parking garage, keys dangling from his fingers. The shape crumpled against the concrete pillar looked like a heap of discarded clothes at first. But then it moved. A hand reached out, trembling, and he saw the blood. "Help!" The voice was barely a whisper, but he recognized it instantly. "Emma?" He sprinted across the garage, his heart hammering. His sister's best friend lay on the cold ground, her face bruised and swollen, her jacket torn. Blood seeped from a gash above her eyebrow. "Jesus Christ, Emma, what happened?" She tried to speak, but only a sob came out. Her left eye was nearly swollen shut, and her lip was split. Marcus had known Emma since she was 12. The girl who'd braided his sister's hair for prom, who'd eaten at their dinner table every Sunday, who had become like family. Seeing her like this ignited something primal in his chest. "I'm calling 911. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "No!" Emma grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Marcus, please, not yet. He'll know where I am." Who did this to you?" She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her bruised cheeks. "Derek, my boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. I tried to leave him tonight, and his voice cracked. He said no one leaves him, that I belonged to him." Marcus felt his jaw clench so hard his teeth ached. He'd met Derek once at his sister's Riley's birthday party 3 months ago. The guy had seemed charming enough. Too charming, actually. The kind of smooth that set off alarm bells Marcus had learned to trust from his years as a prosecutor. "We're getting you out of here," Marcus said, sliding his arms under her as gently as he could. Emma winced, but didn't protest. She weighed almost nothing. How long had this been going on? How had he not noticed? He carried her to his apartment on the 4th floor, his mind already racing through options. Once inside, he settled her on his couch and grabbed his first aid kit from the bathroom. "Tell me everything," he said softly, cleaning the cut on her forehead. "And I mean everything, oh Emma." She spoke in broken sentences, each word seeming to cost her. Derek had been wonderful at first, attentive, romantic, generous. But after 6 months, the control started. Who she could see, what she could wear. He'd isolated her from Riley, from her other friends, making her believe it was her fault when he got angry. Tonight, when she told him it was over, he snapped. "He followed me here," Emma whispered. "I was going to your sister's place, but I couldn't lead him there, so I came here instead, hoping... I don't know what I was hoping. Then he cornered me in the garage." She touched her ribs gingerly. "He said he would kill me before he let me go." Marcus's hands stilled on the bandage he was applying. In his years prosecuting domestic violence cases, he'd heard those exact words dozens of times, and he'd seen too many women who didn't take them seriously enough. "You're safe now," he said, though he knew it wasn't that simple. "But we need to document this. Hospital, police report, restraining order, the works." "He has connections, Marcus. His uncle is a police captain. His cousin works for the mayor's office. He's always bragging about how protected he is, how he can make problems disappear." "Then it's a good thing I know a few people too." Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed the number he had on speed dial. "Sarah." "Yeah, it's Marcus Chen. I need a favor. A big one." Detective Sarah Morrison arrived within an hour, along with 2 patrol officers Marcus trusted. Sarah was a pit bull when it came to domestic violence cases, and she documented everything with meticulous care. Every bruise, every cut, every word of Emma's statement. "We'll pick him up tonight," Sarah promised. "But Marcus, you know how this goes. Even with all this evidence, guys like Derek often..." "I know," Marcus cut her off. He did know. The system failed women every day, but he wasn't going to let it fail Emma. After Sarah left with her team, Marcus called his sister. Riley, don't freak out, but Emma's here. She's okay. Well, she's not okay, but she's safe. He explained what had happened, his voice tight with controlled rage. Oh my God, I'm coming over right now. No, wait until morning. She needs rest. But, Riley, why didn't you tell me something was wrong? There was a long pause. She made me promise not to. She was embarrassed. She kept saying she could handle it, that it wasn't that bad. I should have told you anyway. I should have. This isn't on you or her. It's on him.
Riley arrived at dawn with a bag of clothes and Emma's favorite coffee. The two women clung to each other crying, while Marcus gave them privacy and started making calls. First, his boss at the DA's office. Derek Williams might have connections, but Marcus has spent 5 years building cases that stuck, earning respect from judges and cops who cared about justice. By noon, Derek was in custody, charged with assault, battery, and stalking. Then Marcus called in a favor from a colleague who specialized in restraining orders. Within 24 hours, they had an emergency protective order in place. But that wasn't enough. Marcus knew the statistics. Most domestic violence victims were in the greatest danger after leaving their abusers. Restraining orders were pieces of paper. They couldn't stop a bullet or a knife. That's when he called Tommy Nguyen. Tommy ran a security firm staffed mostly by former Marines and police officers. They specialized in protecting people the system couldn't quite keep safe. Consider it done, Tommy said after hearing the situation. No charge. Anyone who hurts women deserves what is coming to them. Over the next week, Emma stayed in Marcus's guest room while the case built momentum. Tommy's team kept watch, documenting every time Derek violated the restraining order by driving past Marcus's building or calling from unknown numbers. But Derek wasn't stupid. He was careful, never quite doing enough to get arrested again. His lawyer, expensive, slick, was already talking about pleading down the charges, claiming Emma had attacked first, that Derek's past donations to local charities showed his true character. Marcus lay awake at night staring at the ceiling, listening to Emma's nightmares through the walls. He thought about all the women whose cases he had prosecuted, the ones who'd been brave enough to testify, only to watch their abusers walk free on technicalities. He thought about the ones who hadn't survived long enough to make it to trial. Not this time, not Emma. The break came from an unexpected source. Derek's ex-girlfriend from 2 years prior saw his arrest on the news and reached out to Sarah Morrison. Then another ex came forward, and another. A pattern emerged. Derek had done this before, multiple times, and his family's connections had made the complaints disappear. But Marcus knew how to build a case. He worked 16-hour days, tracking down witnesses, finding the police reports that had been mysteriously lost, interviewing Derek's former neighbors who'd heard screaming through walls. Emma slowly began to heal. The physical wounds faded, though Marcus knew the invisible ones would take longer. Riley practically moved in, the two women inseparable again. On good days, Marcus came home to find them watching movies or cooking dinner, almost like before. On bad days, he'd find Emma staring out the window, jumping at every sound. I feel like I'm being a burden, Emma said one evening. 3 weeks after that night in the garage. She was sitting on Marcus's balcony, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm June air. You're not, he handed her a cup of tea, and sat beside her. You are family, Emma, you always have been. I should have left him sooner. I should have told someone. I just kept thinking, don't. Marcus's voice was firm but gentle. Don't blame yourself for what he did. That's on him, only him. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Your sister said you're working on my case yourself. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He paused. When I was in law school, my mom's best friend was murdered by her ex-husband. They'd had a restraining order. It didn't matter. She died in a grocery store parking lot while people watched. I became a prosecutor because of her, because I couldn't save her, but I can help you. Emma reached over and squeezed his hand. Thank you for everything, for believing me. Always. The trial came 4 months later. Marcus had built an ironclad case. Medical reports, witness testimony from 3 ex-girlfriends, security footage from the garage showing Derek following Emma, phone records proving he'd been harassing her despite the restraining order. Derek's lawyer tried every trick in the book. He attacked Emma's credibility, suggested she was vindictive, implied she had provoked the attack, but Marcus had prepared her for this. Emma sat in the witness box with her head high, her voice steady as she told her story. He told me no one would believe me. He said he'd make sure I look crazy if I ever tried to leave. But I'm not crazy. I'm not a liar. I am a survivor, and I'm done being afraid. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Emma collapsed into Riley's arms, sobbing with relief. Marcus stood behind them, his hand on Emma's shoulder, feeling the weight of months of fear finally lifting. Derek was sentenced to 8 years. Not enough, never enough, but more than Marcus had dared to hope for. As the bailies led him away, Derek turned to look at Emma with cold hatred in his eyes, but Tommy's security guard was already moving to block his view, and Emma didn't flinch.
6 months after the trial, Marcus hosted a dinner at his apartment. Emma had moved into her own place nearby, was back in school finishing her degree, and had started volunteering at a domestic violence shelter. Riley had just gotten engaged to her girlfriend of 3 years. Tommy and Sarah were there too, along with a few other people who'd helped along the way. To fresh starts, Riley said, raising her glass. To people who give a damn, Sarah added. To family, Emma said quietly, looking at Marcus. The ones we are born with and the ones who show up when we need them most. Marcus raised his glass, feeling something unknot in his chest that had been tight for months. To survivors. Later, as people were leaving, Emma pulled Marcus aside. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, and her smile reached her eyes again. The bruises were long faded, though he knew she still carried scars no one could see. I never thanked you properly, she said, for finding me that night, for believing me, for fighting for me when I couldn't fight for myself. You don't need to thank me. Yes, I do. She hugged him tightly. You saved my life, Marcus, and not just that night in the garage. Every day after, you gave me back my future. He hugged her back, blinking hard. You are the one who saved yourself. You are the one who got away, who testified, who refused to let him win. I just helped clear the path. We make a good team then, she pulled back, grinning. Riley says you are still single. Have you met my friend Jessica? She's a doctor, loves crime documentaries, and makes a mean lasagna. Marcus laughed, the sound echoing through his apartment where, months ago, he tended Emma's wounds and promised her safety. Let's focus on your happy ending first before you start writing mine. Too late. Coffee shop, Saturday, 10 a.m. She'll be the one reading a Stephen King novel. As Emma left with Riley, their laughter floating back through the doorway, Marcus stood on his balcony and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, other women were trapped like Emma had been. Other people needed help they were too afraid to ask for. But tonight, this one woman was free. This one story ended the way it should, with the survival safe, the abuser behind bars, and a future full of possibility stretching out like an open road. It wasn't everything, but it was enough. Marcus pulled out his phone and texted Emma, I'll be there Saturday. Someone needs to make sure this Jessica deserves you. Her reply came immediately. Pretty sure it's my job to make sure she deserves you, but I appreciate the backup. Love you, big brother. He smiled, saving the message. Then he went inside, turned off the lights, and for the first time in months, slept peacefully through the night. Derek Williams had tried to break Emma's spirit, to make her believe she was powerless. Instead, he had paid the price for his cruelty, with his freedom, his reputation, and his ability to hurt anyone else. And Emma, she had discovered something Derek could never take away, her own strength, and the family who would always have her back. That night in the garage could have ended in tragedy. Instead, it became the beginning of Emma's new life, one where she was no longer defined by fear, but by the courage it took to survive, to testify, and to believe that she deserved better. And on Saturday morning, when Marcus showed up at that coffee shop and saw Emma laughing with a kind-eyed woman holding a Stephen King novel, he knew that fresh starts were possible. That sometimes
The people who show up in your darkest moments become the light that guides you home. That night Marcus found his sister's best friend injured. Someone did pay the price. But in the end, justice won. Love won. And Emma, Riley, and Marcus learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up, holding on, and never letting go until everyone makes it safely to the other side.